Morning, everyone. Here we are, it's August. As I was mentioning earlier on, we don't usually have a session in August, but hey, everything's changed at the moment, so we thought, why not? Welcome to Impact Women's Network, Impact WN. So I think most of you are familiar with the purpose of the group, and really just for those that are not, and to refresh everyone, it's a group that are interested in how we can unite and raise the profile and visibility of the work that we do in our many different areas, whether that be academia, as sole traders, as business leaders. So thank you all for attending. Again, most of you know that the network is co-founded by myself and Shima, and it is coordinated and run by Gemma, who's also on the call today. So if you ever have any questions, please do contact any of us, whether that's about subjects, involvement, speaking, feedback, anything like that is great. So at the end of the session today, I'm going to run through some of the upcoming agenda items and also the results of the survey that we recently conducted with you all. But for now, I want to introduce you to our speaker for today, who's going to talk about data as an asset, which is one of our themes for this year. So our speaker is Anna Lombardi. I'm really excited to hear from Anna, who's going to talk to us about data in ways that we probably might have been aware of, but not to the extent that Anna's going to go through this with us. Anna is a data and interactive journalist at the Times and the Sunday Times, and she also has a background from Cambridge as well. She was an EnterpriseWISE alumni a couple of years ago, so we're absolutely delighted to have Anna with us today. So Anna, over to you. It's your session. You run it as you choose, and I'll go and be quiet somewhere.
Good morning, all. Let me try to share my screen first, so we can start. Can you hear me all right? Yes. Right. So thanks, first of all, for having me today. It's great to be able to share my experience and also discuss with you all a topic I'm really passionate about. Please feel free to interrupt me anytime. If you have questions or comments, just go ahead. My name is Anna Lombardi. I am a data and interactive journalist at the Times and Sunday Times, and I've been in this field now for nearly 3 years. Before that, in 2016, I was a postdoc in experimental physics in Cambridge, and that's about the time when I decided to leave academia and look for new challenges. So I decided to go back to study, and I enrolled in a master in science communication, and that's where I first learned about data journalism and this field. And I got really interested in it. And then in 2018, I got this position that I currently have at the Times and Sunday Times. So today I would like to talk to you a bit briefly about my daily job, so how we use data in the news. But then I would also like to broaden up a bit the discussion and share with you some thoughts about data visualization more in general, and also data literacy, which I think is really, really important, especially today. So data in the news, how do we use them every day? I would like to start from this quote by Nate Silver. He's the author of his book, The Signal and the Noise, highly recommended for anyone of you who hasn't heard about it. It's a book about probability and statistics applied in our daily lives, and it's super interesting. Anyway, he said that once that numbers have no way to speak for themselves, we always speak for them. And that's exactly the point of data journalism, because especially today in an environment where we have data everywhere, it can be hard sometimes to navigate them and to make sense of them all. Data journalists try to make sense of them and make them speak, to give them some context, to analyze them critically, and also to add context and meaning to them. So I'll give you just an example. You've probably come across over the past year this dashboard. It's the UK government COVID-19 dashboard. It has been updated every day since the beginning of the pandemic, and it contains a lot of data, data on people tested positive, on daily deaths, hospitalization, vaccinations. It's a true and interesting full set of data. But it's a bit of a maze, because sometimes it can be difficult to find the interesting bits in all these data. That's a property of all dashboards. They are not explanatory, but they are more exploratory, meaning that the reader is basically asked to just dig in and try to find out what's most interesting for them. Now, this is a set of stories that I've worked on the past year, all taken from that same dashboard. What have we done? We haven't just picked one number, but we have tried to look for trends, for outliers. We've tried to spoken to experts to make sense of all these numbers and try to find the most interesting news lines for our readers. Of course, this is just one type of data source we use. Always in the frame of COVID, but looking at different angles. We have looked at the European Space Agency satellite images, for example, to look for pollution levels and how they changed in the first weeks of lockdown. We also looked at the most isolated communities. So once we were all in lockdown, what was the life like in these already isolated areas? So we sent reporters to actually find some stories on the ground, but always starting from some data in the first place. And we also looked at data on donations to food banks, and we found that most food banks donations were falling at the very beginning of the pandemic. So we got another news line there. So in all these cases, we start from the data from different sources, and we look for a story. As I said, a news line can be related to an increasing, decreasing trend. It can be related to outliers or comparison with other countries, for example. In other cases, we start from a story and look for the data to add some context to them or to enrich with some examples. So we collaborate with specialist reporters across the newsroom. They may already have a story, a topic they're working on, and they just want some more context around it. And I think that's really important because it gives readers some extra bit of information. And also, I put in brackets, this can also help overcoming our biases, because if we always read in the news about knife crimes or politicians always talking about immigration, we can think that these are really big numbers we are talking about. And we have no clue if it's an increasing trend or if it's something that has been going on for a while, if there are areas more affected than others. So this is our job, to really give a context and give a bigger picture to our readers. So this is an example. It's a news story about deforestation in the Amazons, and what we did was just look for some data about the main causes over time. We try to identify areas most affected, again, to give a bigger picture. So for any data-led story, there are 3 key steps that we always follow. So the first is the researching and collection of data. There are data that are already available and open to everyone. In other cases, that's not the case, and we need to send some freedom of information requests to public bodies to get data directly from them. Or sometimes we even collaborate with charities and data agencies that are happy to share with us data that they have collected themselves in the past. The second step is the cleaning, analyzing and verifying of our data. We always need to check that our conclusions are accurate and realistic. We need to check that reality matches our numbers, basically. And that's why case studies and speaking to experts is so important, because we can really have a feedback on our analysis. And finally, we have the visualization and communication part. So we try to communicate our findings through charts, tables, maps, and sometimes we write some analysis stories based on our data. And data visualization can be really important because it combines narrative and visual elements. And that can be really important to help our audience to better understand and also memorize some of the information we are giving. So I will focus now on this last part, which is very important for data journalists, but I think it can be really helpful in any field, whatever is your job. Data visualization is something that is coming up quite often. I'm sure you have all come across some kind of data visualization in your job or even going through the news, especially over the past year, I would say. Through data visualization, we would like to communicate some kind of information, some stories. We want to guide readers through complex data, complex concepts, and whenever useful, we also want to personalize the information we are giving for our readers. But how to present some information visually in an effective way. I found some advice in this very nice book, Storytelling with Data. It has been published quite a few years ago, but it's still very up to date if you want. And the two points that are stressed in this book, to create effective data visualization, you always have to focus attention first, which seems obvious, but sometimes you can just forget about it. And you always need to tell a story. So how to focus attention in the first place? We can use some of the so-called pre-attentive attributes, which are basically visual properties that we as human beings notice even without realizing. So let me give you an example, because otherwise it seems a bit abstract. If I ask you to count all number 3 in this list of numbers, how many can you spot? Let me guess.
6.
Yeah, 6, exactly. It has been a bit hard though. You need to really go one by one and try to spot the 3. Is it a bit easier if I do that? So this is basically how pre-attentive attributes work. In this second example, we simply put a different intensity of color to the number 3, and our eye is immediately catches it. So is immediately focused on the main bit of information we want you to identify. It seems something pretty obvious, but sometimes we just don't realize we can actually exploit this kind of properties of our mind and brain. There are different types of pre-attentive attributes. You can use color, size, orientation, different shapes, etc. If we use these strategically, we can really guide our audience and our readers to focus on the main bit of information in our visualization. And then secondly, we always need to tell a story, simply because numbers really don't resonate with us. Again, as human beings, we try to memorize and remember much better a story rather than a fact or a cold number. So as in every story, we need to consider 3 components, which are the plot, the twist, and the ending. So for every data visualization we put together, we need to think about what's the context, what is the interesting part of our data. If there is nothing really interesting, maybe there is no point even in visualizing them. And finally, what do you want your audience to take away from it? And usually data visualization come in the form of charts. You've probably come across some of these, are pretty standard. You have bar charts, pie charts, etc. For each of them, we always need to remember, again, to focus the attention on the bit of data that is really important about it. We can use different color, we can use annotation as well to guide the reader through. And a bit of advice, just try not to emphasize too many things in one visualization, because if there are, you just need one story for each chart. If you have more, then you have material for more than one chart, as simple as that. And, oh, sorry, just, yes, well, there are more sophisticated type of data visualization, so not just the simple chart I've been showing you. And this more complex type of visualization can help us visualizing complex concepts. And as human beings, again, we usually find very difficult to visualize and picture in our head very small or very big number. So if I tell you, again, in this example, you have 1.3 billion plastic bottles are sold in a day around the world, you may just think that's a very big number, but it's really hard to compare it with 1 million or 1 trillion or 2 millions. And in this visualization, it was done by Reuters, I think last year, they really visualize the exact volume of this big number compared to something we are more familiar with, which is the Eiffel Tower. And you instantaneously have visual effect of how big is that big number. The same they did for the number of plastic bottles sold over the past 10 years. And then you have basically a mountain covering almost half of the island of Manhattan in New York. So it really gives you a sense of the size. Another way we can use more sophisticated visualization is to explain a complex concept. So for example, this went a bit viral last year in March. It's by Washington Post, and they tried to explain why is social distancing so important to slow down a virus. So on the left-hand side, you can see the spread of a virus in a population where social distancing is not in place, and on the right-hand side, instead, when it is in place. And you can actually really see the flattening of the curve on the right. So it's a complex concept to explain in words to people, but if you have a visual element there, it just resonates better with us. And then you have a static, even more complex visualization. These really take quite some time to go through and read them properly, but you have visual design influences coming in, and they're just beautiful. They contain a lot of information. You just need to take your time to just go through every bit of them. These are all examples by visual designer Federica Fragapane. You can follow her on Pinterest. I think she has a lot of different examples of her work there. So we have talked a bit about data visualization and all the different forms it can take. I tried to give you some different examples here. But now let's move on to data literacy, because we need to be careful sometimes, because data and data visualization can sometimes be misleading. And data literacy becomes really crucial to avoid being misled by numbers and to get a distorted picture of the world around us. So what do we mean by data literacy? Basically, it's the ability to read, understand, and communicate information from data. It does involve some maths, of course, but also, and I would say most of all, logic and critical thinking. And we always need to apply that whenever we see a bit of data or a data visualization. And it's a common belief that a story, let's move back a bit to journalism, but a news story that is based on numbers must be true because it has something scientific about it. It's not an opinion, it's based on numbers, data, so it must be true. Well, the problem is that both data and data visualization can be misleading and can sometimes lie. So we need to really be careful. Why they can lie? Well, data can lie because, for example, a data set is incomplete, or it has been put together through unreliable methods, or it looked a sample which is not really representative of the population we are looking at. And on the other side, data visualizations can lie because they display the wrong type of information, they display too little information, or have a poor design. And again, I'll just give you some examples because it will be much clearer with some real world example to consider. So this was shown on the BBC, and it's a breakdown by ethnicity of court judges in the UK. So you have Asian, Black, mixed, white, and other. And it's probably a bit hard to read, but if you manage to read the number, the percentage for white court judges is 92.6, which is completely out of scale. I mean, if you have to really plot it with the scale shown on that data visualization, it's completely off the screen. So it's giving you a very wrong perception that basically you have not such a big variation according to ethnicity, while in reality you have. So in this case, what I would have done, you just avoid adding in the 92.6 white ethnicity in there. You just clearly label it on your title or on your stand first in the visualization, just saying 92.6 are white, and the other ethnicity, for the other ethnicity, the breakdown is as following. So in that case, you really separate the two because you can't simply compare them on one visualization. This is a bit more subtle because it's showing anti-Asian hate crime data in Seattle. And for every year you have a number. Again, the data is correct. So for every year you have the correct number displayed. And at a first look, it can seem that the trend is going down. But if you look more carefully to the x-axis, then you can see that time is basically going backwards. So the trend is actually increasing, but the visualization is just giving the wrong impression. So it's giving you a not accurate representation of reality. Talking about global warming, in this first graph, the data from NASA, so all good, it's showing the global air temperature change across a period of time from 1998 to 2012. And it seems the trend is almost flat, even if you want a bit decreasing. But then if we simply go back 18 years, then the trend changes completely and you have a completely different picture of what's going on. So temperature is really increasing. And if you go back even further, well, that's clear enough, I would say. So again, in this case, all these visualizations are showing some real and accurate data. The problem is in the first one, you're just selecting a bit and a portion of your data that is not telling the true story. So you really always need to be careful of the selection you make in your data set. This was a poll about Brexit back in 2016, just before the referendum, and it shows the different percentages of people aiming to vote for leave or remain in the EU. Again, numbers are completely correct. You have 43% for leave and 39% for remain. But this visualization gives you the impression that basically the leave party is almost 3 times as big as the remain one, while the best a better visualization and more accurate, I would say, representation of reality would be this second chart on the right. So the gap is not as big as it's shown or it appears from the first one. This was instead shown on German television, and it's aiming to show the number of adverse effects, in particular blood clot, among people vaccinated with AstraZeneca vaccines. And on the right of this chart, you can see the 8 people out of 1.6 million that, according to the data, got these adverse effects. So you have 8 people in orange having these adverse effects. And then you have a population of 1.6 million clearly labeled, but visually represented only by 33 small icons here on the left. So visually, the proportion you get is more at 24%, so 8 out of 33 rather than 8 out of 1.6 million, even if it's labeled. But visually, the impression you have is that a lot of people actually got these effects. So again, you're giving a message visually, which is not the message given by the data, because according to the data, that proportion goes down to 0.0005%. So visually, it's not, it can't be represented this way. And then a last one you probably come across again. On the left-hand side, you have a map showing the winning party in every county in the US. And this was used by Donald Trump to claim a landslide victory in the 2016 election. This map is correct, but it's actually not showing the number of people that voted for him actually in 2016. Because if you look at the number, he actually got less votes overall than compared to Hillary Clinton. So the true picture is better given by the second map on the right, where each dot size is proportional to the actual number of votes for each candidate. And you can see in the central part of the US, you have very less populated areas. So of course, every county voted for him, but not really many people, after all, really voted for him in those areas. So just to summarize, some last bits of advice. Try not to look at a chart, simply looking at it, but try to really read and interpret it. Always use your critical thinking and try to figure out if the message that is given by that chart corresponds to reality, corresponds to the original data set. Always check sources and methodologies used for any visualization you come across. And also remember that good data visualization is actually a very powerful tool. It can enable discussions and conversation on very important topics and can really show the importance of some of these data we have. If you are interested in finding out a bit more about the topic, I just leave you this list of books if you're interested to deepen this subject a bit more. And yeah, if you want to get in touch even after today, feel free to direct message me on Twitter or LinkedIn. You can find me there. And yeah, if you have any questions now, I will be happy to try to answer.
That's great. Thank you so much, Anna. Dana came in with a question actually while you were presenting. So Dana, do you want to start with your question? And,
yeah,
and Anna, if you, sorry, one sec, Anna, if you want to stop sharing, then we can see each other a little bit better. That's great. Thank you.
I didn't want to interrupt, so I just wrote it in the box.
Oh yeah, sorry, I wasn't checking that.
That's okay. So I just wanted to know kind of what your thought is on how often poor data visualization is used as a tool to support their cause, or just like a genuine mistake, like they don't know what they're doing. So for example, like the anti-Asian hate crime seems typical, like why you put the years in order to chronological, so that feels like it's tactical, whereas like some of the others look like they're genuine mistakes. So my question is, how often do you think it is either way?
Yeah, I think most of the cases are genuine mistakes. There are cases, of course, where people willingly use visualization to, again, claim something that is not true. But I think what I find, especially in news, most of the time, if you find a mistake, it's really a genuine mistake. Sometimes, yeah, especially with very strict deadlines, you just go through data or visualization and just can commit some mistakes. And this is the same I found in a book by Alberto Cairo, How Charts Lie. He also says 99% of the times it's a genuine mistake. So yeah, you just need to be careful yourself and just try to spot it before getting a wrong opinion, basically, about the subject.
Claire, do you want to jump in with yours?
Yeah, thank God, that was so insightful. I really enjoyed that. I mean, there was a lot of head shaking, head nodding, you know, so thank you so much, Anna, that was really interesting. But there was a couple, it's like a double question really, but the first one was, how do you research without disappearing down a rabbit hole? And I know that you're very focused because this is your livelihood, but taking it from a not experienced researcher who would like to use some data, how do you, I suppose then the next part of my question was, and then know that the data you found is accurate. So do you use specific sources? So I suppose that would probably limit that, disappearing.
So there are some, let's say, official sources. Usually we start always from. So there is the Office for National Statistics, ONS, there is the NHS, all the public bodies basically publish periodic reports with tons of data in them, and you just assume they are right in their way. So they also have very specific methodologies attached to them. So we always also check what they've done, what sample they've looked at, etc. So it's very accurate in a way. They really present also the research behind the data set itself, which is always good. And the other bit of advice is always check with an expert in the field that your data and your conclusion from the data are sound and have a match in reality, have some sense, basically. Because sometimes if you're not an expert in the field, you run the risk to just overlook some bits of information that are actually the crucial ones. You just go straight into something that actually it's not really the most interesting part to look at. So always having a check and a feedback from someone else also helps. Yeah,
thank you.
Anna, one question: colours. Does it matter what colours you use?
Yes, there are tons and tons of books and research on this. You really need to pay attention because you want your chart to be readable by anyone. And you have color blindness, for example, you always need to take into consideration. So never use green and red or even shade of colors. They must be readable by a broader audience. So every tool we use to visualize data, we always have this color blindness check at the end. So we can actually check that on whatever screen, and from anyone, it can be easily accessed.
Perfect, thank you. Anne, do you want to jump in with your question?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, that was fascinating. I really enjoyed that. I had a couple of questions. One was, do you ever feel that because you're contributing to journalism that you're ever being encouraged to sort of, you're seeing journalists trying to massage the data to form an argument? Or, you know, I mean, I know I've worked in PR in the past and we've sort of, you know, leapt on data sometimes to try to make, you know, generate a story around something. I'm really impressed that the Sunday Times has a sort of a data journalist essentially who's authenticating stuff, and I obviously have huge respect and trust in what you're putting across, but you know, more generally, what do you see in the media?
Yeah, so I can speak for the Times and Sunday Times because it's what I know now. I've worked in the newsroom now for almost 3 years, and I have to say, over this time I never had a time when a journalist came to me with a thesis to prove with data. They always come with questions. They always come with a topic and just ask us to dig for some data and try to find some newsline in them. But then it's not the final article. It's not the final news stories. Whatever we find must be checked with experts, must be checked with someone else as well. So we can just provide some insights from the data, but I never personally proved a thesis just because I had to prove that thesis going through the data. Sometimes the opposite is true. So they come to us with a thesis and we just prove them wrong looking at the data. So you have a change in the newsline basically at the end of the day. So yeah.
And I was just wondering, is there something like a data kite mark essentially? You know, you're telling us to be data literate and to read carefully. That thing with the years in the opposite direction, that was so shocking, and it makes me realize how much more alert I need to be. But wouldn't it be nice if there was some sort of trusted, you know, some way of knowing this is trusted, like a, you know, I don't know, like an organic symbol for organic product or something that sort of.
Yeah, could be, yes. Usually, well, yeah, I would say in the media, standard media, usually you have some sort of check anyway. Okay. I would probably be a bit more careful with whatever you find on social media, because there you don't have that check, you know, constant check going on. So at the Times, for example, for every story that is published, you have at least 3 degrees of check other than the writer himself.
Yeah, your lawyers and everything else.
And lawyers. And so, of course, there will be some mistakes at the end of the day, but you are sifting them a bit more than in social media. So just be a bit more careful with that.
Okay. So just final point, I won't hug this, but you know, we've got to get you talking to young people, because you know, we need to breed the next generation of people who are data literate, you know, because it's too easy to be taken in by fake news. You know, we've just seen it, particularly if you're getting your news sources not from the pages of the Sunday Times, or you know, or sort of, you know, this official journalistic sources, but you're taking a lot of your information from social media. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's important really to have this. It's like really 2 or 3 concepts, but if you apply them to everything you see, then it can really help.
Do you think it's something increased as well, Anna? I know, you know, with the pandemic, we'd have our daily briefings, and you know, literally, you're in front of you. There's chart after chart after chart, and you know, actually, I mean, I remember when they first started, I was standing at the screen looking at them because they went through them so quickly as well. You know, is there are we going to start using them more because it's a storytelling tool? And do we need to educate people, like Anne says, you know, the next generation? But actually, I would say that there's quite a lot of people that need to look at those charts and know immediately that they're biased.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, the pandemic really helped us as a field. Data journalism really became a thing after COVID, unfortunately. But people, as you said, with this daily briefing, they were drowning in data every day. And yeah, what we always try to do is to get all this bunch of data and try to really highlight the main bits of information that really are interesting for the audience. And yes, young people, but also everyone really should become more more data literate, if you want. And yeah, definitely.
So now I have another totally random question to ask you. We have a serial entrepreneur who will remain nameless in Cambridge, who goes apoplectic if you show them, keeping it gender neutral, a pie chart.
Yes.
So is there a chart of choice or a chart to avoid?
Most people in the field try to avoid pie chart, and there is a very easy explanation to, I mean, a technical explanation. We are really bad at reading angles. We are much better in reading lengths or, you know, heights of a bar chart or a column chart. To compare different angles, if I give you a 30 degrees or 45 degrees angle, it's really hard to find the difference between them. So from a visual point of view, we also try to avoid them wherever possible, because you always have a different option that can work just as well, better in this case, from a visual point of view. So it's not like pie charts are evil, it's just they're harder to read for human beings. That's all. So yeah, use them if you want, but yeah, 99.9% you can just represent exactly the same data with a bar chart, and it's much easier to understand, much more accessible.
Okay, well, it's good to have the reasoning behind that. I'll still show them pie charts because I know it winds them up, but hey, you know, that's just part of the fun of it, isn't it? Dana, you've asked for the list of resources, so yes, we can definitely send those. The video, the recording will be up on YouTube as well, and I don't know if Gemma or Anna can paste them into the chat now.
Yeah, I'll just do it now. Yeah.
Perfect. Does anyone else have any questions?
Sorry, just a quick one. You know the slides you showed where you compared like numbers to physical objects, so like the comparing the plastic bottles to the Eiffel Tower. So one of my colleagues did something very similar with like double-decker buses.
Yeah.
But the example you showed, is there kind of a tool or a website or something that kind of can do something similar? Because it wasn't as fancy as yours was. It was kind of just making it ourselves. But is there like a tool that you can use that generates it for you?
I think you can use something like D3, which can create interactive and like 3D kind of visualizations. Or if you have like some simulations code, you can just simulate it, export as an image, and then recreate your graphic in Illustrator, for example. I think they did this in this case.
Okay. Thank you.
And Claire, did you want to jump back in?
Yeah, thank you very much. I just was thinking along the lines of, you know, a more lay person trying to use what you're describing and using it accurately. So thank you very much for answering my previous questions. But in terms of it being quite time critical for a small business, but wanting very much to show, I work very much with business modelling and why it's strong and healthy for a business to have a business model and small business numbers, you know, people that succeed, people that fail. And I'm just thinking, how would you recommend ways of researching that are, I think things like Office of National Statistics, like definitely I would go to. I think Forbes come up with interesting statistics sometimes, and they always give accreditations where due. But are there, and it's not, I'm not asking for like a shortcut, but are there ways of doing this that are way downscaled from where you are? But you know, still using those quite right and understandable check and balances before you post something out there.
Well, I think it depends on the topic you are researching for. As I said, all public bodies have some kind of data sets, and I would always look for the methodologies behind them. Some universities do some research as well, and they're happy to share their results too. So I collaborate, for example, with Oxford University on the extreme weather events and the cost to basically lives in the UK over time. So they got a data set that they put together. They have all the methodology, all the notes for it, and they were just happy to share. So I would just say, have a look around, whatever the topic is, and yeah, there are really tons of data out there, even too much sometimes.
I know, well, this is it. I get a bit, you know, the rabbit hole statement earlier was no joke. So that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, but all these data visualization skills, I think are fundamental skills, but you can use them for a business report or in data journalism. Really, data visualization you can apply to everything.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Thank you.
It's definitely that a picture tells 1,000 words, but you've just got to make sure it's the right picture. And oh my goodness, I think you've definitely shown some of the areas of pitfalls and bias and given us a bit of guidance as to what we can do in our roles. Does anyone have any final questions? Thank you, everyone. Anna, is there anything that you want to send us away with? Thank you for sharing those details as well, those references.
Well, maybe just the initial quote I used. So numbers never speak for themselves, and always try to really look for the story behind them. And yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Thank you very much, Anna. It's been really, really useful. Now, I'm going to be slightly embarrassed now because I'm going to share with you the survey results, and I've done absolutely nothing because I only saw them yesterday. So there's no visualization, there's no pie charts, there's absolutely nothing apart from a bit of text. So Anna, please don't tell me off. I feel I should have had, you know, if we change the time, would you rather have a croissant, a cup of coffee? And do you know what I mean? I should have done something much more interesting, but there we go. Okay, so we asked you, you know, this has been an interesting 18 months, let's put it that way. And we've adapted as everyone else has, but we actually thought it was quite important to come out and ask questions of you and just say, look, is this still working? What can we do differently? We're always up for a change. This is your group. We are just merely the facilitators of it. And, you know, we have noticed there's been a real shift in people coming to certain sessions, whereas we used to have a core and people came in for different topics. There has been a little bit of a shift. So we're like, do you know what, let's go and ask you the question. So we did the usual kind of survey, and thank you to those that responded. And I also went out and had a conversation with a range of different people to get some feedback from you. So I think it's just worthwhile. We asked you the question, we should share the results in this very dull way that I'm going to share them. So currently the time seems to still work for everybody, which is good. I think we've had a little bit of confusion as to what the time is and the networking happening afterwards and those types of things, but 9:30 to 10:30 first Wednesday of the month seems to still be working. We also asked if we were going to change the time, would you know, something that isn't mid-morning suits you better. And actually most people came back with breakfast meeting. I think we have to, you know, as time goes on, we'll decide whether we do move that. And that kind of links with the next thing. Interestingly enough, I think people's opinions have changed on networking as well. So where, especially in and around Cambridge, we're very used to doing evening networking, it was quite telling to me that most people were saying, actually, we don't want to do evening networking again. So that's going to be quite interesting moving forward. Then, oh, it's my sister, there we go. We asked about the topics. So remember, the point of these sessions is to kind of make us think a little bit differently and to challenge what we do, so we can then go away and think about how do we use the information that we gather in our work, in our personal life, and those types of things. So it was good to see 70% saying they felt they were interesting and thought-provoking, but quite a few have said it's too complex. You know, we've actually done, if you go back to the whole theme of inter-resilience, we've done some really weighty subjects so far this year, and maybe it is too much to condense into these sessions. So you know, when I've run through the results, it'll be interesting just to get your immediate feedback on that. And you know, the amount of people that just come to meet people, which is great too. The networking doesn't hugely work virtually. I think we've all you know, had experiences of where it's worked well, but vast majority hasn't been working, and people seem to want to just come to a session, have a bit of a chat, and then go, as opposed to staying on and doing the overall networking. So we also ask you, when do you want to come back to meet in person? And 25% said this year. I think what we're hearing generally is most people are saying, let's just leave it. Let's wait until next year. So again, I'm interested to know whether that's true. You know, that's what is reflected of people on the calls today. And then the final one was, what type of sessions would you like? So just networking is still really important. The speed networking, and that's what we're actually going to do in September as well. So we go back to those chance encounters of where you can meet people in different areas to where you would normally meet them. Not a lot of appetite for a conference, whether it be a half day or a full day, which is quite interesting because obviously we've done really successful conferences. We wouldn't do one this year in any case. So that's the kind of flavour of the feedback. The conversations that I had were very much around people are super busy. They're busy, they're juggling, you know, whether it's summer holidays or schooling or you know, quarantining, whatever it is. And also that was one piece of feedback, and then the other is the relevance, and I'm okay with that, you know, unless the network says we should do things differently. We don't expect everyone to come to every session. You know, we want you just to rock up to the sessions that you're interested in. So I'm going to pause. Does anyone have any comments or observations on that survey result? Is that what would reflect what you think too? Claire?
One of the things that I have found that was really nice following the meeting before last that you very kindly invited me in to talk on was that I then talked to people after that. So although there was probably a similar amount of people that there were today, there's I'm a member of another group called Shifties, and they do a really lovely thing called a non-agenda meeting. And that's really nice, where you don't go in to network. The purpose is actually just to get to know that individual. So, you know, they may become a friend, they may just be somebody that lurks in your background, and you know. But I think that was quite nice that you know, since that meeting, I've actually had several meetings with people from that session, and it's been really positive. So I think, you know, even out of today, you know, I've looked at people that have been here today and thought I definitely want to connect through LinkedIn, because that's a really nice platform just to be able to continue the talking. But then, you know, further than that, I'd really like to get to know more either about you or about what you do. Yeah, so that could be a possibility.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's really good feedback. Thanks, Claire. And we're quite happy to, if someone's doing something that's working, we're quite happy to nick it. There's no original ideas. This is still being recorded. Yeah, oh, well, never mind. Debbie.
Good morning. So just to reiterate what you're seeing in your survey results, my full-time job is networking across 5 counties for NatWest, and this is exactly what everyone else is seeing. People are feeling zoomed out. People are kind of tired, but they're not ready to meet face to face. And so at the moment, it's almost there is less interactivity going on, but it's more meaningful almost, so it's much easier to organise those virtual cup of teas, but they're doing less of it. They're cherry picking. Something that I've seen work really well is around topics like we've had today, is breakout rooms with discussion topics, so you're getting to speak to 2 or 3 people that you might then pick up with. And then the other thing is having people drop their LinkedIn link in the chat and having that chat savable, so it's really easy to connect afterwards. But great session today. Thank you. Thanks to Anna.
That's great. Thanks, Debbie. Anne, you posted in the chat. Do you want to speak as well?
Yeah.
And you're very welcome. It's lovely to see you.
Thank you. No, I've had a conflict for the last year and a half where I had something else clashing for Wednesday morning, so it was never possible. But I totally agree with Debbie, and really that's kind of my theme, is that small group sessions sometimes online, maybe around a theme, randomly generated, just gives you those chance encounters, which are a bit the same as sort of walking up to a bar or a coffee station at a networking event. And I have definitely built my network during lockdown through online events, through those LinkedIn connections. And, I think we have a culture of being very open these days. We've had to be, because we've had to rethink how we connect. And but we likewise aren't anticipating a huge amount of in-person activity. I think I would get together for a dinner. I feel like, I had a dinner with my board members the other day, and we sat in a garden, so we're just, being super careful. But I think for really select events, I would go in person, knowing that it's, you don't want to necessarily go into a big crowded room right now, not quite knowing, who might be infectious, and particularly when you're about to go off on holiday, you don't want to, then get pinged a week later. So we're all super cautious, but who knows? We got to watch the data, right? And see what it's telling us, the trends, and really trust the experts to help us understand what's coming up.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Dana, so yes, you're very welcome, your first session. And actually we've had more people join from outside Cambridge over the last 18 months. The blockchain one was a crazy amount of people from all over the world. So there's positives that can come out of it. And I actually think there'll be instances where they are going to be in person, but actually, we're real advocates of hybrid. You can do both. You could actually do both before we had a pandemic. So hey, let's just make it more inclusive. So thank you for that. Gemma's just posted the YouTube channel link in. I saw Claire had asked for that, so thanks, Gemma, for doing that. Basically, just that's all I really wanted to say. Do just keep giving us your feedback. We always say, and I think it probably says it on the next slide, we're always looking for topics for speakers. What are you interested in? And then we'll go and find and facilitate those sessions. And we do try and mix them up in terms of, some of them are presentations, some of them are, here's a question, go and answer the question in small groups. And our next one is very much about going back to that speed networking. So on that note, we're keeping Impact Wednesdays first Wednesday of each month. So if you just put a placeholder in your diary, you'll know that it's happening. And if you can join and it's a topic that resonates, then please do. The 1st of September, we're going to do speed networking. So we actually really do need people to book in advance, because we know that quite a few people already know each other. So if we can, rather than it being completely random, we want to try and organise it so that you have different, you know, sessions where you're going to be meeting hopefully different people. So do please register for that and share the link out to anyone else that you think might be interested, because that one I think would be a really good one to get some good numbers in. Yeah, and if you want to sponsor or speak, then please just drop Gemma a note. And then some member news that has already been posted on social media. Lizzie, who some of you will know from Cole, is doing a piece of work on the way we work. It's already been featured in Cambridge Independent. Some of you may already have contributed to it. There's a quick 3-minute survey that's there, and they've asked us if our Impact Win members would contribute, and there's an incentive. You can either get potentially win a Fitzbilly's hamper or a session with Kelly, who's from Talent Glue, who's actually running that piece of work. And actually we'll probably get Kelly to come back to this session in the future to present it as well. So the link, you don't have to take it. I mean, Gemma, maybe post that as well too, if you can, in the chat, please. But it's also on Twitter and LinkedIn and everywhere else. And I think that was it. So does anyone have any other business? We're going to, in a minute, I'll say thank you, and then we're going to end the recording, but we can then stay on and do some informal networking for those that want to stay. Does anyone have any final comments or input they would like to make? No? In that case, thank you very much everyone for joining, and a huge thank you to Anna. I think we're definitely going to be watching how we use data in the future, so thank you very much for your time.